Hi, welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint Podcast, episode 114. Finally back. I moved house to Dali in Yunnan province, and it's absolutely gorgeous. We've had several power cuts since I've arrived, but I'm essentially living on a mountain right now, and I've got my new studio set up. Usually, I have Phil as my consultation for setting up electronic stuff. I'm not exactly great with it. So I do apologize in advance if the video looks weird or the audio is not quite on point. You know, it's a process. I'm gonna fix any issues after I figure out the quality of this particular podcast. So in terms of the course and the podcast, everything is back to normal. As you probably know, if you've listened to the latest podcast, we will be switching over to. We're moving away from subscriptions. We're still going to keep a monthly subscription for around $50 a month. We're going to increase that price. But we're going to be making everything available for lifetime access piecemeal bundles. So no more emails from people telling us how much they love the course, but they have to cancel because of whatever got in the way, which really frustrated us, as well as, of course, the actual people involved. And I think this is going to be a much better situation for everyone. So I'm very much looking forward to that. We're going to hopefully do that in November this month, if all things are sort of on track with that. So we've had some great emails and comments again from you guys this week. We've had some new people on the course that have been really sending us some useful, informative, just really nice thought out emails and comments. So we're going to share a couple of them with you today. We're going to start off with Jessica M. This is early on in the course in a bonus video. She says, having found RTH a complete waste of time, memory collisions used out of context, very similar keys. So I think she's referring to another type of memory technique that isn't as effective as the one we use. The hands and moving method is what we use to learn reading, writing, and pronouncing any Chinese character in less than a minute, usually around 10 or 30 seconds, depending on how well you've grasped the method. And she refers also to Chinese blockbuster, using Chinese blockbuster, hopefully, but lacking a clear path to applying it. I don't know what blockbuster is, but I want to look into it. I've heard of it a couple of times now. But she says, and it seems you've solved it. I'm excited to have you guide me over the intermediate gap, where my problem is primarily related to word and character frequency drop-off and acquiring vocabulary. Yeah, we call that the wasteland of the intermediate. So essentially, you know, the law of diminishing returns kicks in, doesn't it, after a while? Our curriculum currently covers 4,000 words, 1,530 characters. We're going to approximately double that over the next year or so. But currently, even at that level, the amount we have right now covers 94%-ish of the Chinese language by coverage. If we doubled that, do you know how much it would cover? 99%. So doubling the entirety of the course to, say, 10,000 words, 3,000 characters plus, would only add 5% onto the coverage. That's what we mean by law of diminishing returns. So, and in my opinion, if you want to get past that stage, some people, even if they are technically, they feel that you could class them as advanced, they still feel like they're intermediate. So it's hard to know when you're not, right? I guess it's down to spoken performance. So I remember reading Moonwalking with Einstein. This is before when Phil and I were still laying out the plans for the original version of this course. And one thing he referred to in that book was the OK plateau. I think it was his book. I hope I'm not confusing it. I might be confusing it with Gabriel Weiner's Fluent Forever. But anyway, there's something called the OK plateau, where your brain just says, all right, we're good enough. It stops trying. And, you know, just due to, I don't know, efficiency. Let's focus on other stuff, you know. Because the law of diminishing returns kicks in, and you do like an equation in your mind, you're like, okay, it's not really worth continuing, and you start to naturally just drop off in terms of the effort. But the difference between people that are intermediate and people that make it to more advanced levels in any skill, not just Chinese, the people that address their weaknesses and consistently. So, you know,
acquiring vocabulary is tough, but that's probably because you're not reading and listening enough, or because reading and listening, you don't feel like you're having that many clicks as you used to, so you don't do it that much. But actually, you have to just do it consistently without thinking about the immediate results you're getting. And then after several months, perhaps, you suddenly notice, wow, I was able to say that thing that I couldn't say, or wow, that conversation I had with that lady was super fluent, and I've never spoken that fluent before. It's all because of the quiet results you get through consistent reading and listening to stuff that you understand, of course. That's how I manage that. I understand completely what you're going through there. She says, coming at this after a year of studying Chinese, I think your system isn't for beginners. It seems to me that someone would benefit from 100 to 200 hours of oral CI instruction first, and cold character reading up to at least a 200 character level so they understand how it fits together. And then this system will rapidly increase their vocabulary and reading level. Now, I don't know what oral CI instruction actually is specifically. I just imagine, because you say oral, that you mean spoken practice, right? I'm assuming that's the case. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you think that jumping in and speaking for 100 or 200 hours to get a feel for the language would help before learning characters. Fair enough. I don't really have enough. I don't have I only have my own personal experience and situation. That's pretty much what I did. I just spoke a lot, listened and repeated, and I tried to speak to people, and my progress was incredibly slow. My progress personally only started to speed up when I learned characters and I started reading and listening, because I was speaking a lot anyway. But with it's hard to say no, that's wrong, because I mean, how can I say that? How can 100 or 200 hours of speaking not be good for you? Even if you don't have any foundation, you just start and you just try. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think it's down to personal preference, though. I don't think it's like a clear-cut thing. There's no clear-cut thing. This is the best way to learn language. And I've listened to all the sort of major polyglots. And they do tend to have like conflicting ideas when to speak, and how to know. In fact, with our language mastery podcast recently, John Fotheringham's podcast that we were on, we spoke about this, and it's really, really tough to decide, when do you speak? Do you follow sort of the Steve Kaufman view, or the what's his name? I forgot his name. The Stephen Krashen, for example, where it's all about reading and listening first. You can even have a silent period for several months. You just don't speak at all until you gain an understanding of the language, and then you gradually introduce speaking. That's basically the rough idea we've based our method on, the Mandarin Blueprint Method. Or do you just do more like the Benny Lewis style, where you jump in and you try and learn a few words, and then you use them immediately, and you just blurt stuff out and just try your best to speak with every single person and create every opportunity of speaking, and then in your spare time or whatever, when you can, just do the study, the official study, and start learning words and grammar separately, which I think is the way, roughly what he suggests. And they're both really successful, so it's tough. But yeah, maybe. I mean, I say speak when you want, and as much as you want, and as much as you can, from the very beginning, if you like. But I think that you'll gain a lot more from speaking if you know how to read and listen, and you're doing that constantly. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have anything in here, like you're not consuming stuff, how can you speak it out? How can you produce it? It's similar to when you're a kid. You don't, as a kid, you listen for hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours before you utter one word. So yeah, it's tough. But cold character reading up to at least a 200 character level. Yeah, I looked into cold character reading is basically reading practice, but without learning characters. You're just looking at the characters. And that's essentially what I did too, actually. Really, I mean, I didn't read proper sentences until like a year in, but individual characters and words, that's how I learned the characters doing that. And I looked up a little bit about this. And it seems to me like rote learning, essentially, which we're not that into. I think it's a way of patching. It's a way of getting reading practice without knowing how to teach characters properly, in my opinion. So it's like, okay, we don't want to teach the very traditional way, where you don't learn any characters and you just sort of jump into a really difficult text and you don't know what you're looking at. So they start with individual, very, very simple sentences and just repetition. And you repeat the audio and you look at the characters in front of you. And that's how this cold character reading seems to work, right? But for me, that's like a way of getting to the reading. Just saying, look, reading is good for your language acquisition journey. It's much better for you to read and stuff, but we don't know how to teach characters. So just look at characters and read and copy and they say that, and I remember, like I said, I use this for learning thousands of words, learning in a not very effective way, but I would look at a word on the digital flashcard and I would recognize it. I've seen that character so many times. I see the shape of it. That's Weilai. That means future in Chinese. Brilliant. Correct. But then I would always confuse Wei with more, very similar looking character. And I wouldn't really have acquired that character. And so I feel like I'm rambling a little bit there, but the gist is generally, I'm not really a big supporter of that cold character reading but I've only looked at it like just the general gist of what it is for like 5 minutes. But just on the surface, I don't like the concept. I think if you know how to teach characters, which we do, you know how to learn characters very efficiently, you should learn them as soon as possible so you can read, right? Just jump straight in, get it done. And it's a bit more work on the front end. It's a bit more work in the beginning, but it's so worth it after a few weeks because you can read stuff. Read properly, not just like, I recognize that squiggle. The shape of it roughly is this. No, you actually know that each character inside out and you can pronounce it and you can write it. And that's the difference with our method. So, of course, I'm very biased and not an expert. But I really appreciate. And Jessica has sent so many already. She's only been on the course a very short time, and she's already sent a ton of insightful comments that really made me think, and Phil too. So please keep them coming. Very interested to hear your views on this stuff. Next, we've had John McCann on how does what. It's a grammar lesson. And he says, these grammar points are very helpful, and I periodically go back and review them. Keep up the good work, and they are not too much information. Well, that's really good to hear. That's really good. Not only that they seem they're not terrible to watch, which is great, but sometimes certain grammar structures they have a lot to them, and it involves a lot of example sentences. So I'm glad that they're not overwhelming for you, John. Thank you, mate. Next here is Christine, and this is well done, Christine. By the way, she got through in around 6 months. She got through the entire foundation course, which is phases 1 to 5, which is well over 2,000 lessons. She's learned how to read and write and pronounce 600 characters and the 1,000 most common words, I would say. So it's about 80% coverage. She says, woohoo, just about 6 months to get here. Interesting to see the variations in speed and approach from different people. So if you go to this part of the course, you'll see all different people who have said, I finished this in 2 months. It took me in 9 months. It took, and saying how long it took them and what their feelings are about this achievement. It's great. I'm very happy with my progress. You should be. And also just to add my voice to the others to say how awesome this course is. Thanks so much for your hard work on this. You guys rock. Thank you. You rock too. You all do. Thanks for the great comments. And on to the intermediate. Well done. Pat yourself on the back. Now, on to the intermediate, which is double the size of the foundation. Yeah, I'd say more than double, actually. More than double the size of the foundation. So I'll see you in another 6 months, hopefully, and you finish that maybe. We shall see. No pressure, though. Don't pressure. Enjoy yourself. Next one here is from Christian. Solem. I think I'm pronouncing that probably wrong, but Solem. on, again, this is the same lesson. Fantastic. All right, so this is, again, Christian has also finished his foundation. Well done. And here's what I'm talking about. He says, what a ride. It took me exactly 100 days to finish the foundation course with no 0 days. But a few days of only doing ANKI reviews with no new characters added when I was particularly busy at work. Well, that's fine. That's not a 0 day, so that's good. Thank you, Luke and Phil, for a fantastic course, and congratulations to all my fellow students for reaching this milestone. See you at the end of the intermediate course. Love it. Well done, mate. Thank you. 100 days. That's just over 3 months. You've gone from, I can't say what your level was originally, so I don't want to, but if we went from 0, you learn how to read Chinese, 80% of Chinese technically by coverage in about 3 months. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Well done, mate. Oh, here's another a relatively new person on the Mandarin Blueprint Method curriculum, Lance. And he sent a ton of useful stuff in the community, our community forum, which has just been very useful. So I appreciate that, Lance. Keep that stuff coming. It's great. He says, I just came across this article that appears to be from one of you. It's about shadowing, which is where you listen and repeat to what you are hearing as a native piece of content at the same time, or you try to repeat it at the same time out loud. It's quite challenging, but it's very good for it's an all-round skill. Pretty much improves everything except for writing, because you can actually read the text and listen and speak at the same time. It's very good for you. He says, I have a handful of sounds that I struggle with, such as yo. I skip the O unless I'm hyper-focused on it. Yo. Well, you should. I mean, the O, I'm not quite 100% on that one. Yo. So you mean you say like yo, like that? I imagine that's what you mean. Some people do that because the pinyin spelling is a bit weird. It throws them off. U. My native speaking language partner regularly complains about it, either because I move my lips during the vocalization, or because I don't complete an E sound at the end. Yeah, I know what you're trying to say there. Yeah, so teachers teach it like like with the E at the end. I don't hear all the native speakers make the E ending. Yeah, me neither. Yen, I-A-N. I use a instead of e. Yeah, yan, right? Yeah, that's very common for sure. I also have some trouble with keeping my tongue on lower teeth when combining Q or J with retroflex consonants. Yeah, for sure. Like so, chu, chu. Yeah, so chu. When you do like, we call it tongue acrobatics. So retroflex is like chu, like your tongue's curled back, and then the Q or the J is obviously tongue down here, behind the teeth. So it's difficult. Sure, it's difficult to do that. Tongue acrobatics. Other than that, I feel pretty confident with pronunciation and tones. I find shadowing very effective at picking up grammar and vocabulary, but after reading your core article, I'm wondering if I'm shadowing too early and at risk of fossilizing my problem areas. One thought I had was to practice silent shadowing while I correct my remaining pronunciation issues. Do you have any other thoughts? Well, you seem to be aware of your pronunciation. So can you hear, when you hear yourself speak, are you aware that you said the mistakes? That's important. So if you're repeating something and you say chu, right, oh, that was wrong, and you correct yourself, well, that's fine. It's obviously best that you don't speak. When we're talking about fossilization, I personally saw fossilization as grammar related more, really. So for example, if I try to speak too early, and I'm saying, say I'm speaking English, right? So I'm learning English, and I say, toilet is where, and I keep saying toilet is where. I don't know, maybe we've got a digestion issue or something. Toilet is where. Then eventually, even if I learn the correct way of saying it, where is the toilet, I'll still have the bad habit fossilized in my mind of saying toilet is where, and it becomes a part of my way of speaking forever. That's how I saw it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it also applies to pronunciation. I don't see why it wouldn't. But when you have, first of all, you don't need to have perfect pronunciation. If you have some pronunciation mistakes, it's much more important, as long as it's not debilitating. It sounds to me like your pronunciation issues here, with the possible exception of yan instead of yen are very minor, and it's just standard pronunciation issues that everyone has. And it's not, as long as you're not getting the actual syllables wrong. You're not saying a Q when you should say a CH and all that. Then it's not such a big problem, in my opinion. And as long as you're aware of them and you can correct yourself, that's the key. So I would, and there's no way shadowing will hurt you if you're aware of your mistakes. Send a recording. How about that? Why don't you record yourself doing a sentence or however much you can handle, a paragraph or whatever, and send it to Phil or myself, and we'll correct it for free. We do that, guys. If you're on the pronunciation course or just the course in general, usually people start doing this more when they get to phases 4 and 5. They'll send in a 1 minute or 30-second clip of them speaking, and we'll critique it either publicly or privately, depending on what you fancy. No worries. So yeah, I would say that's the best way. Send it in, and I'll tell you, or Phil will tell you exactly how bad the situation is, and it probably isn't that bad. Okay, but overall, I would say no. Go ahead, keep practicing shadowing. It seems to me that fossilization is when you're just speaking. You're not copying directly a native speaker. So it's when I'm away from my tutor or away from my content, and I'm speaking to a Chinese person and I'm interacting, and I end up making up something or I say something wrong over and over again. But if I'm there and I'm listening to the audio, it's I'm going to know if I've said something wrong usually. So maybe that's an old article. If we, I'll have to take a look at the article to see exactly what we said. But I would say, yeah, don't worry about it, Lance. Go ahead, keep shadowing. It's great for you. Next one here is from Lucy Haley. She asks, is it bad if I skip other people's own explanation of their character script? Yes, that's fine. They're only there to help. So she says, I find it helpful when I can't think of anything, but sometimes I get confused and start merging parts of their story with mine. Yeah, this is how I would do it. I try to make it from scratch without looking at any of the comments, unless I'm just feeling lazy and I just want to get through it as quickly as possible, easy as possible. But sometimes just directly looking at the comments can actually, like you say, make it worse. So I'd say overall, yeah, try and make your own scene first. Try for like 30 seconds. If you're struggling after 30 seconds, you really don't have anything, look for, or even 10 seconds really, then look for some inspiration below. And that's it. That's how I would go. Yes, they're only there as a push, as a support, if you need it. Next one here is from Nacho. He says, in my case, I've been reading all the paragraphs at least once. So this is phase 5 materials. This is when we start introducing longer form content. That's how the course structure works. Most of you listening to this probably are aware, but just in case, we start with pronunciation concepts and then teach you characters, individual characters, then you learn individual words. And then phase 3, you start reading whole sentences. And then phase 4, you're obviously doing everything from phases, pre-phase to phase 4, but you're also reading short stories, dialogues, longer form content. And then phase 5, you're reading entire paragraphs and full stories, and as well as everything else. So it sort of compiles onto each other. He says, in my case, I've been reading all the paragraphs at least once. So I think before moving one step forward, I'll come back, check and study all of them, because I want to be ready for those big stories and want to do it right, not rushing. Sounds good. You can't really hurt yourself by reading and listening more. It's not ever going to cause issues, right? Don't let it restrict you though. If you want to take a peek at the story and see how you can handle it, go ahead. But that sounds like a great idea. Do a bit more preparation, and then be able to do the full story better. Andrew Yusupov, this is on a pronunciation lesson in Pronunciation Mastery. He says, all of these intricacies and exceptions, inconsistencies to pinyin pronunciations, and there are a lot, there are a good handful of them, sure, would be solved by teaching students 注音. All sounds are depicted exactly as they are. Why don't we? Well, same reason why we teach simplified characters instead of traditional is because it's more common, right? So pinyin is something that's everywhere. If you want to study Chinese, you're going to need to learn pinyin. 注音 is optional though, because you can just not use it. I've heard it's more efficient. I've heard it's actually, if you have a Zhuyin keyboard, it's actually faster and easier to type once you've mastered it, but relatively few people use it. So that's it. And we have limited time and resources, and that's the only reason, not because Zhuyin sucks or we have a problem with it. And Pinyin isn't that bad. It's got a few inconsistencies. It's not lots, it's a handful. And they're very simple to grasp once you've, so by the end of the pronunciation mastery course, anyone can grasp all these inconsistencies in Pinyin. So maybe one day I'd like to get not only traditional characters in, but also why not Zhuyin as well? Teach people that for sure. Heath Campbell says, "Is this a little like?" So this is for make a movie for zhe, which is, well, it has a few different usages there, but yes, you would put it on the end of it's usually at the end of a word, a compound word, to signify a person who does that thing. He says, "Is this a little like adding er to an English word? For example, a carpenter, a mugger, a lawyer." Oh, literally a mugger, like someone who mugs people, or someone that makes mugs. I don't know, but either way it works, I suppose. Lawyer, sweeper, and so on. And the answer is yes. And I don't know the exact rules, but there's also 家 as in home, but you would say like 科学家 is 科学 is science, 科学, and then 家 scientist. 音乐学家, 语言学家, like these 学, these sort of areas of study, I suppose you'd add a 家 on the end. 这 is actually very general. I guess it's more working class sort of areas, sort of jobs. Like I'm a carpenter, I'm a mugger, mugger. 律师, lawyer actually is different. 师 like 老师, right? 师 is again another sort of ending that relates to a field, like a sort of job. So you have 家, you have 师, you have 者. And you also have I can't remember anymore now, but you notice these patterns, and Heath is starting to notice too, which is fantastic. Next one here is from James Trethaway on level 6 complete. He says, "Hi guys, James here, first time commenter, long time fan. When counting the vocabulary, it leaves out certain words like 口. It has 人口, which means population, or 入口, which means entrance. Why is 口, mouth, not counted as a piece of vocabulary on its own?" And then he kind of answers his own question in the next paragraph, where he says, "Just as an add-on to this, I just went back and reread your explanation of Chinese characters, talking about how they are morphemes. So is mouth used differently in Mandarin than it is in English, in that it can't be used alone, similar to your description of 唱?" Yes, so characters are morphemes. Chinese characters are morphemes. They're chunks of meaning. So we always use this example. Take the word, because we're lazy, and this works. So take the word unexpected. You've got un and you've got ed, right? These are morphemes, and the word expect in the middle is also a morpheme. They're all chunks of language, but un and ed can't be used alone, and expect can be used alone. I expect, blah, blah, blah. Characters are exactly the same. Characters are un or ed or expect. They are chunks of meaning called morphemes. And 口 in modern day Chinese is not a standalone, it's not an expect, it's more of an un or an ed. So it's only used in combinations. So for example, 入口 or 出口 or 人口. The modern day version of mouth would be 嘴. 嘴. That is a word. It's one character, but it is a word that can stand alone. Okay. This is a really common thing. Check out our blog post on Chinese character. Obviously, I've already answered James, so I'm not talking to you, James. You've obviously you get this by now for sure. But if you want to go and check out our blog, there's a Chinese Characters 101. We also have an ebook all about just this general stuff about Chinese characters, just the big questions. Where did they come from? How have they developed over the years? How many are there? How many do I need to learn? And what are the types of Chinese character? That's pretty cool. And what are Chinese characters? How do they work? So that will answer all your questions in there if you have them. Next one is Jessica again on what will and won't make you fluent in Mandarin. She says, if you sat in front of a Chinese, this is quoting me, I believe. If you sat in front of a Chinese television for 10 years, that would be a very bad way to learn Chinese. I agree, she says. Though with the right material, it would eventually work. Remember Stephen Krashen presented a case study of a child who learned Mandarin watching, he estimated, about 500 hours of cartoons on TV. My Spanish teacher learned perfect native American accent English watching TV. It can and often does work, but in Chinese, it doesn't make you literate. And literacy in Chinese is a real barrier to acquiring vocabulary. Yes, there's a few parts to that. So, yeah, watching 500 hours of cartoons as a kid, like is really basic, right? But I imagine that wasn't all the kid did. Maybe it was. But your Spanish teacher, did he just watch TV or did he also study English, TV, I think, is fantastic as a support. I learned so many cool words from TV all the time because it's emotional and it links to your memory emotionally. I've learned hundreds of words from TV, like in a relatively short time when I first started watching it. Because I just remember that feeling of being like, oh my God, I'm understanding what I'm watching, and those first few episodes of TV that I watched in Chinese, like on my little iPad thing, are still etched into my memory for some reason. I just remember so many words from those few episodes. It's weird because it's the emotional content and obviously the situational, the feeling of enjoyment and satisfaction I had at the time. But just watching TV from zero, I don't see how that's going to work. With no, like, as opposed to other methods. I'm sure it could work eventually, but with the right content, sure. But just it's a tough one. It's like maybe your time is better spent doing the Mandarin Blueprint Method, and then spending for like 400 hours, and then spending 100 hours on TV. And that's another thing, of course. The barrier of characters, right? You can't learn characters from TV, unfortunately, and it certainly is a very big barrier. Yeah, but I highly recommend watching as much TV as you can. The Chinese TV shows, I have completely changed my mind on them. When I first started out, I was always like, these are so weird and very badly made and cheesy, and they are. But I don't know what's going on right now, but they just seem to be making so many better and better ones. And they still have that Chinese way of just being very random. Like it starts off a story about a little family, and then suddenly everyone always dies. Like it's usually very, not exactly uplifting for the most part. But it will just go off in all sorts of crazy directions because these series are so long. It's like 70 or 100 episodes sometimes, at least 40 in a series, and that's it. And they all release pretty much. They're all there to watch. You can watch them in a row, most of the time. And they're just, but they are so engaging once you get into them. On the other hand, though, a lot of TV shows are coming out now that are about very day-to-day stuff. It's a very Chinese thing. It's not sort of like, American Gods or whatever, or Game of Thrones, or these sort of really fantastical things. They're usually just about, a family of three people, or a husband and wife, or three couples that are having problems with their marriages. They're very day-to-day stuff. So it's very good for not just learning Chinese, but also getting a real taste of what Chinese culture is like. So just a little tip for you there. Yeah, Chinese TV is improving overall. Or maybe it's just that I've just grown to like it. I don't know. Another one from Jessica here. She says, "Man, oh man, I wish my first Chinese school listened to this." So this is a video where I just basically talk about like, hey, input, read and listen. Don't focus so much on output at the early stages. She says, "I wish my Chinese school listened to this. They measure success in terms of output, and I left with poor comprehension of anything anyone said, even though I had memorized a decent amount of vocabulary. You had learned that vocabulary, but you hadn't acquired it. I switched to a CI teacher online." Again, there's that CI, just a teacher, I guess. and worked over the last year on a CI base, and wow, what a difference. A base. Okay, I've really got to find out what this is, so please tell me. What is CI? I imagine it's just a Chinese school, right? Another one, Lucy Haley. She says, is it okay if we are reading sentences and feeling confused by the translation? Yes, I'll say straight away. Yes. For example, I recognize ma as a horse in the following, 我要过马路. So yeah, but that obviously doesn't translate well. I'd assume it's some cool language cultural thing with crossing roads and horses or something. Haha, love this course, highlight of my day. Thank you, Lucy. And yeah, it's just the typical sort of when you're in the beginning or early intermediate stages, is that like, when does a word finish and when does a word begin? How do I know if it's a single? You just have to wait until your vocabulary is high enough, and you just have to get used to reading and listening to the language. Just by doing it a lot. I sound like a broken record today, don't I? Yeah, 马路 is a compound word. They're attached to each other. It's not like horse and then road separately. So it's 马路, and of course that comes from, like you say, like you suggest, which is it's that's what roads were for when this word was invented. 马路. It was for horses, not for cars, of course. So yeah. That's just a very simple mistake that everyone makes at this stage. When you're transitioning from looking at individual words and characters to reading sentences, you're like, where is that a word, or is that together, or is that separate? It can be frustrating, but just keep at it. William Beeman on New Vocabulary Unlocked for 觉得, as in to feel. He says, hi, can you say something about the use of 还 in 我觉得他比我还聪明? I think of it as yet or still. It is, yeah, it does mean that. So could the sentence be, I think he is still smarter than me? No. In this context, this is yet more. It's like more 聪明. So 比我还聪明. But it's like it's more like saying actually even more. 我觉得他比我还聪明. So if you got rid of the 还, right? 他比我聪明. That's just like, I reckon he's smarter than me. But if you say 我觉得他比我还聪明, like you're saying he's even smarter than me. So the idea is that I'm really smart and he's even smarter than me. Okay? So that's what that brings to the table in that sentence. Dima Kuranda on 我家的狗最近不一样了. It's a bit of long form content. She says, I'm a little bit confused about this sentence. 不乱吵也不乱叫. 乱. What is that 乱 doing? What is it? Why do we use this word 乱? Thank you for the answer in advance. It's an example of, I learned this character 乱, right? And you learn it, actually it means chaos or disorder, which is a very clear definition, isn't it? Chaos. But then you see it and you're like, not chaos loud and not chaos bark. So what the heck is that doing? What does chaos have to do? But it's because you learn one definition of the character. I'm assuming, I might be incorrect, and maybe this is not what's going on in your mind, but I'm just saying this is what happened for me a lot. So you're like, 乱. But 乱 in this context, you put it before a verb, and it just means doing this verb with disorder, without thinking, randomly doing it. So 乱吵乱叫 is like at any time he randomly barks and just does it when he wants or it wants. So, and to just keep it, all I'll say is that you can use that in front of a ton of different verbs. I mean, I can think of about just there's no point giving you examples because there's so many. So just keep an eye out for that, Dima and any listeners out there, like 乱 before a verb, and try some out. With your tutor as well. So have a look at some example sentences on Pleco or in our course on your flashcards, and have a little look. So that's all we have for the comments and emails this week. Thank you very much for those. We have had a few movies come in, so I'm going to run through them. So again, for people that are not on the course, first of all, what are you doing? Get on the course, try it out, 7-day free trial. The early part of the course, we teach you characters, right? And we do it by memory techniques, as I've already discussed. And we do it by creating movie scenes in your mind, using actors, which are people, sets, which are places like buildings, and props, which are objects. And then they all sort of come together and they represent the various aspects of the character. So we have amazing people on the course that give so many great suggestions for us. And here are a few that we've got this week. We've got a couple from Rick Santos. So I'll make a movie for 雪, which means snow. So he just says, he doesn't describe a scene. He just says, unlike the rain, after snow, there is a lot of shoveling. So the bottom part, the prop, the object we recommend that you choose is a shovel, or I believe we also recommend a broom of some kind. And the top means rain, that top part of the character. So rain and shoveling, right? So instead of describing a scene, he just said, sort of like a haiku or some sort of poem. It says, unlike the rain, after the snow, there is a lot of shoveling, cleaning to do. Okay, that's a terrible poem. So you can actually do a lot with that. I kind of like this idea when people do this, where it's just like they give a general idea. They don't lay it out too thickly for you or in too much detail, and just let you work with it if you want. So for the first thing I'm thinking is rain, and it falls and it's like flooded, and someone clicks or does something and it turns into snow, and then they start shoveling. So very simple. Another one that Rick had here is threatened by an arrow, crossbow. So we've got on the left, we've got crossbow, that's a prop, because this particular component actually comes from arrow. That's what it originally means, arrow. And then woman, of course, on the bottom, and carries a heavy load of grain. That he means grain at the top. Threatened by an arrow, a woman carries a heavy load of grain and appears short. Maybe it's so heavy that it's actually squished her, and then she's running away from someone trying to get her with a crossbow. That would be great. You could even add in like an accordion sound. There's like she gets squished and she's like maybe going up and down or something like that. I like to do stuff like that. Add in different senses to the scene. Well done, Rick. Next we have so Della Fuller on Make a Movie for D, as in younger brother. So this would be great if you have a younger brother. This is because you just imagine your younger brother represents this keyword. But not everyone's that lucky. So let's see. Donna is in the backyard of my childhood home with Katniss Everdeen. D-I. Okay, right, yeah. Donna has a samurai sword and Katniss has her bow and arrows, of course. Donna's little brother, that's the meaning, of course, of the character, is tied up to a stake with horns. You can see the horns at the top of the character, attached to the top of his head. Both Donna and Katniss are trying to be the first to knock the horns off Donna's little brother's head. Donna may not have a little brother for much longer. Oh, great. So your friend Donna. Okay. Katniss Everdeen. Oh, I get it. Sorry. Katniss Everdeen represents the bow component. It's coming together now. So it took me a while. And Donna is your friend who actually has a little brother. That's very handy. Very good. Very lucky. Well done, Della. That was very vivid. I like that one. It ticks all the boxes. Next one here is Shay. There's another one from Della. Let's have a look. It says, Sean Connery is in the lobby of Bard on the beach, where I go to see plays. Great. He has a microphone in one hand, which is the eye sort of shape on the left, and a very angry turkey in the other. That's the representative of the bird component on the right. He's desperately looking around the lobby asking, who has lost his turkey? Whose turkey is this? Who does this turkey belong to? He eventually gives up with a shrug of his shoulders and asks instead, who wants this delicious turkey? The turkey gets decidedly angrier. I love that. Well done, Della. Oh, yeah, it's Sean Connery, bless him. He passed away recently. What a legend. I watched him recently in The Untouchables as well. And he's actually been a big part of our course. like I remember I mentioned him in the pronunciation mastery as a way of pronouncing the SH, and the CH sound, like curling your tongue up. And he's been a long-standing member. He's like our sort of default S character in the course. So, it's been very personal and emotional seeing him go. Yeah, great scene. Great scene. Sorry, I got distracted there. Yeah, great scene. Who wants this delicious turkey? Yeah, I can just visualize the emotions in there. I'm sure you guys can too. Well done, Della. Another one here is from Will R. on Make a Movie for show, as in to receive. I like it when people lay out the actor, the set, the room. It just makes it so readable. So thanks for that, Will. He says, actor Sean Connery, set OU, room within set front door. Okay, cool. So we've got a USB stick, which is what it looks like. Well done. And a Mormon missionary. Oh, I get it, because this component means, this component on the right, it means knock, or a tap of some kind. And he's Mormon missionaries because he would sometimes get Mormons knocking on his door, spreading the word and stuff. So that's very, very good choice. Make a movie. So Sean Connery comes to the front door. A Mormon missionary knocks on the door and Sean Connery answers. The missionary says, "Hello, I would like you to receive this wonderful USB stick full of spiritual data that has been made for you." Sean Connery replies, "Receive this," and slams the door in the Mormon missionary's face. That's another Sean one. That was fantastic. Well done. Well done. I think when you're a fan as well, when when it's a celebrity or a famous actor or a famous character of some kind that you know well, it just makes the scene so much more fun. It's probably some like Zoomers out here, like young kids who have no idea who Sean Connery is, and it's just like, yeah, it's all right. But for me, I just love it. That's just a great scene. Christine on Make a Movie for Yang, which means ocean. It's one of those un or ed words though. It's not stand on its own kind of character. You need hai yang. You need to have hai with it. So she says, "I struggle to get an association between sheep and the ocean. So in desperation, I Googled ocean sheep. I was not disappointed. Here is a link to an ocean sheep." And she's put a link. I'll just put it up here as well. It's adorable, actually. I've never heard of this, never seen it before, but there is such a thing as an ocean sheep, and it looks exactly like an adorable cartoon sheep. She says, "My scene is therefore that my sister, her YI actress, needs to build an aquarium for these little leaf sheep which live in the ocean. She attaches a hose, my water drop prop, to the tap in my kitchen of my ANKI location, fills a tank to make a home for these cute little ocean sheep." Nice, really nice, and that adds a very personal touch, very unique touch to it. I'd like to see other people try that too. And yeah, please add in images, links, as long as obviously they're safe and everything like that. Please add in images, videos, all sorts of cool stuff to give people extra inspiration as they're making their movie scenes. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. That's all the movies and comments and emails. It's great to be back. Hopefully this quality of this audio and video is not too bad, so I can keep doing it. I can do it for next time as well. It's been a pleasure. I will speak to you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.